Hello, fellow members of the Alliance, and welcome to episode 11 of the Alliance Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Villagomez. You can find me on Twitter at RJ Villagomez. Find the show on Twitter at AllianceFBPod. Got a great recap show for you today. It's the Monday edition. We're going to go over the games of the weekend, and we're going to talk about our player of the week, our fantasy recap, and a fun little overtime segment. We're going to answer some of your questions. So let's get right to it. Go ahead and turn our attention to that first game of the week. It was Birmingham and Salt Lake, and Birmingham, the Iron, coming away victorious 12-9 on top of the Stallions in a game that started out quite slow. And look, again, these slow offensive starts, we're not saying that the offenses are bad, and we're not saying that that they're not going to catch up at some point, but a lot of these games in the early going have felt like a boxing match, right? It's just a lot of jabs and a lot of jabs and a lot of jabs until eventually someone throws a punch that lands. But we're going to see this for the next few weeks until everybody starts to get on the same page. But this game, again, the first game of the weekend, it started out very, very heavyweight fighty, where everybody was just kind of jabbing. There was some shots down the field that didn't work out. There was some good defensive plays, and there was just some miscommunications on offense, and we just did not see a whole lot of ball movement up until about the last 2 minutes of the half, as it were, when finally Salt Lake punched through for a touchdown, and it was the touchdown vulture himself, Joe Boignon. He crossed the goal line for a 3-yard run with Brandon Oliver setting that up, but it was Boignon that actually crossed the plane for the touchdown. And then in the last 37 seconds, actually, the Stallions did get the ball back, and they wound up kicking a 53-yard field goal to go up 9-0 at the half. And at the half, all the Salt Lake fans were saying how great of an opportunity they had to put away the Iron, who actually did not look as crisp as they did in week one in that first half. Luis Perez, again, we talked about mental mistakes, was making a lot of these mental mistakes that he wasn't making in that first game, and he just did not look at all settled into the offense. And then Trent Richardson, again, that first half for him was not spectacular. In fact, he ended up the game with only 41 yards rushing on 19 carries. So again, a lion's work and matter of fact, he got mostly all of the actual running back carries. Ty Isaac got 1 carry for 2 yards. Jacob Hagan came in. He got 1 carry. So Trent Richardson is definitely, if we're going to call it a bell cow, he's a bell cow. 19 carries for 41 yards. He only averaged 2.2 yards per carry. So again, Trent Richardson is not the guy that's going to bust off gigantically long runs. His longest of the night was 9 yards. And he did get a rushing touchdown. So, and that of course came in the fourth quarter. So, I tweeted out Trent Richardson equals fourth quarter touchdowns, because that's just basically what he does. This Iron offense wore down this Salt Lake defense until they ended up giving that fourth quarter score up. But here's the thing about that Salt Lake defense, and we talked about it with Chantel Bushai last week, whereas she said that the defensive line was going to be a big factor in this game, and they were. They actually did show up quite well for the Stallions, and they looked good through most of it. Again, they kept Luis Perez off balance. They really bottled up Trent Richardson for the most part. And they did not do a whole lot of damage. The Birmingham offense, they didn't do a whole lot of damage. And really, if you look at the stats, the Iron didn't do all that much. I mean, Luis Perez, 24 of 38 for 184 yards, and he did not throw a touchdown pass again. So he has yet to throw a touchdown pass this season. For as impressive as he looked last week, he didn't throw a touchdown pass. And again, this week, he's still without a touchdown pass. So in this early season, Luis Perez getting calls from the NFL without having to throw any touchdown passes. And his receivers certainly didn't help. Quentin Patton, who was the hero of last week, only caught 3 passes for 44 yards. LaDamian Washington, who was inactive last week, came in and caught 3 for 27. And Trent Richardson was actually the surprise in the receiving game. He got 6 passes for 50 yards. Of course, 45 of those yards came on a catch and run by Trent Richardson. So really, if you take out one of those, he had 5 catches for 5 yards before that 45-yarder. So he was averaging 1 yard per catch until he broke away with that one. So again, it's not like the Birmingham offense has completely run away with either game. They've just managed to have a great defense, which is exactly what they had in this case. They came away with a very impressive defensive showing against the Stallions, who actually in their own right didn't have that great of an offensive game. Austin Allen came in on the start, which was a surprise because a lot of folks were not expecting Allen to make the start, but he ended up being the starting quarterback for this. And he came in and was 15 of 31. He only had 114 yards on the game and averaging 3.7 yards an attempt. So again, not a very spectacular day for Austin Allen and the Stallions passing game. In the rushing attack, it was okay. I mean, they actually had a decent rushing attack. Joel Bogdan had 11 carries for 70 yards in that touchdown. Brandon Oliver, who we talked about, he had 14 carries for 59 yards, and he was the one that set up that Bogdan touchdown. So, and then obviously, if the passing game didn't do very well, then obviously the receivers didn't do very well. And DeMornay Pearsonell actually caught the most passes. He had 4 receptions for 28 yards. That's not a very good showing. And then Brandon Oliver, 2 for 21. Jordan Leslie only had 1 catch for 13 yards. And the tight end Anthony Denham, 1 catch for 11 yards as well. So again, not a whole lot to speak about for the St. Salt Lake offense. And again, Salt Lake, St. Louis, San Diego, San Antonio, so many sands and salts. So the Salt Lake Stallions didn't do very well, but again, they had the lead going into the half and were held scoreless in that second half, and then Birmingham just got their points in the second half with that Trent Richardson 2-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. And the special teams coming up big there in the third quarter with a fumble recovery on a punt. So, yeah, I mean, again, this was not anything that the offenses could really hang their hat on, and not a lot of offensive firepower in this matchup. But it was a gritty defensive battle. It was a gritty showing for, again, both the defensive line of Salt Lake and just the overall defense and special teams for Birmingham as they came away with the win. So Birmingham, with that win, improves to 2-0, and Salt Lake drops to 0-2 on the season. And again, this is going to be a big test for Birmingham going into the rest of the season, whether or not that defense can support a sagging offense. And like we said, it's not that Birmingham does not have the pieces to make this happen. Luis Perez looks spectacular in spurts, and he looks like he can definitely get this offense going when he's playing well. And, if they continue to pound the rock with Trent Richardson, I think many a defense will start crumbling there in the fourth quarter and allow him to continue his fourth quarter love for the end zone. So, again, lots of pieces here for this Birmingham Iron offense. And if they all start to click at the same time, and if everybody starts to get going, then there's definitely some fear for the rest of the league going forward. For the Salt Lake Stallions, the takeaways from this game is that obviously they missed their starting quarterback. Obviously, Austin Allen did not come in and do as well as expected. So there's a question mark at the quarterback position. And hopefully next week, Woodrum can come back, because we just know now what Salt Lake looks like without their starting quarterback, and it's not all that great. So, and that running back, they got a good 2-headed monster. So with Oliver and Bogdan, I think they are solid there, and they don't have to really worry too much. But then again, they don't have very many pass catchers that are showing out lately. And that may have to do with the quarterback play, or it could just mean that the quarterback really didn't have anybody to throw to. And again, Birmingham did not give Allen a whole lot of comfort to throw and to do the things that he needed to do. But again, it was just a matter of being able to just kind of hang in there, I suppose. And really, Salt Lake did hang in there. And it came down to the end where they could have tied it at the end. At the very least, could have come up and tried to kick a field goal. But, it was a bad penalty that pushed them back. And they missed the field goal ultimately. So they couldn't hold on for the win, for the tie at least. And that was really one of the difference makers, was the kicking game in general. Because if it wasn't for the fact that Salt Lake missed a couple of field goals early on, we could have been looking at a different score. The 3 kicks that could have been made, and at least one of those would have tied it. 2 of them would have definitely equated out to a win at the very least. But yeah, the special teams for Salt Lake kind of failed in that respect too. So all 3 factors of the game for Salt Lake really lacking. But Birmingham, again, not a whole lot better, just managed to out defense and out hustle Salt Lake and keep that Trent Richardson hammer primed for the fourth quarter. So, all right, that's the end of that game recap, and we'll head on to the next. We almost had ourselves our first big upset in the league in that second game of the weekend. It was a pretty good one between Arizona Hotshots and the Memphis Express, and it came down to an Arizona comeback in the fourth quarter to solidify the win for the Hotshots. And it looked like it was all Memphis early on in this one, as the Memphis Express jumped out to a early lead, putting the first points on the board. Jasper hitting a 38-yard field goal to put the first points on the board for the Express in front of their home crowd. So there's a lot to be happy about there. And then even more to be happy about as Zach Stacy rumbled in for a 9-yard touchdown. Zach Stacy looking like he's a man among boys right now. Actually having a great game for the Express. He looked really, really spry, to be honest with you. He got 19 carries, 101 yards, with a 49-yard as a long, and it was a great 49-yard gallop. That looked amazing. And then, of course, he had that one touchdown run. So, again, it was all coming up Memphis early on as Jasper, again, connect for a 35-yard field goal to put the Express on top 12-0 going into the half. And it was a surreal moment for the Express, who really had a lot of frustrations last week and continue to actually have some frustration this week as well, as Christian Hackenberg struggled again for the second week. He went 14 of 25 with only 102 yards. He averaged 4.1 yards per attempt, no touchdowns. Thankfully, though, no interceptions on this outing. So again, Christian Hackenberg really, really having a tough time out there. And for whatever reason, I mean, I know, again, we've talked a lot about these offenses not getting off to good starts early on for a lot of different reasons. And I think for Hackenberg, he's not on the same page with his offense. In fact, there was a few times where he even said that his offenses were out there doing whatever they wanted to do. But then again, they've all been together the same. And if Wolford can continue to get his receivers on the same page, I don't know why Hackenberg is having such a huge problem getting his receivers on the same page. And again, if it weren't for Zach Stacy, there wouldn't be a whole lot of offense to even talk about in this game. When you talk about the receiving efforts of the Express, Reese Horn, he got 5 passes on 6 targets for 56 yards. Alton Pig Howard had 3 receptions for 24 yards, so not a whole lot of work for him. He had a carry too for 5 yards. It looked like they were trying to go Pig Howard's way quite a bit, though. He did have 7 targets, which was the most on the team. And then Zach Stacy caught 2 for 8. So not a whole lot, again, to speak of for this Memphis Express offense. They've got to find some ways to get on the same page, and it all starts with the starting quarterback. And I don't think we're long for this world for Christian Hackenberg. I know he got the nod after the week 1 play, but here's the thing. If it doesn't work 2 weeks in a row and you only have 10 games, you don't have a lot of time to mess around. So I think now is the time for a leadership change, if not just to see if it works, because it can't get any worse at this point. It really can't. And it seemed as if Mike Singletary went away from what was working in that first quarter, in that first half, rather, as Zach Stacy was the one getting the majority of the work there. And they went away from Zach Stacy. They went away from giving him the ball. I know they were up, and that's when they should have given it to him more. But instead, they kind of went away from Stacy, and they started to put the ball in Hackenberg's hands to try to win it. And obviously, he couldn't hold on to the lead, as in that second half, it was all Arizona, who were led by John Wolford, who was actually the player of the game, or the player of the week, rather, last week. But this week, not a huge outing like we enjoyed last week. Wolford, 14 of 22, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But he did manage to come away with the win. And it was Tim Cook in the second half that ran away with the world. 13 carries, 73 yards, and he actually was one of the main reasons why the Hotshots were able to come back and win. Jarrell Presley got his carries, though, 12 of them for 57 yards. Not the huge outing that we saw last week from Jarrell, but a pretty good outing nonetheless. And then out of nowhere, Justin Stockton, 4 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown. And he had one of the biggest runs of the game. It was a 45-yarder, and it was a beauty of a run that wound up in the end zone. So we could have a three-headed monster over there in Arizona between the likes of Tim Cook, Jarrell Presley, and Justin Stockton. So a lot to be excited for if you are an Arizona Hotshots fan. On the receiving end of it, Josh Huff, catching 2 passes, 1 for 64 yards. He wound up with 84 yards on the day. Rashard Ross caught all 4 of his targets for 67 yards and a touchdown. And then Tim Cook, as we talked about earlier, did it on the rushing end of it, but he caught a touchdown pass from Wolford as well. So going forward, Arizona now 2-0. The Memphis Express 0-2 and looking for answers. But again, if they can make a change, if they can make something work to where they can get this offense consistent, I think they're actually gonna be okay. They have some pieces enough to make it work, but they really have to find an answer at quarterback. Memphis's defense not looking that bad this game either. They look like a Mike Singletary defense, and they look like they've got a lot of building blocks to go on. And so, they forced 3 turnovers on the Hotshots. So again, not a lot of bad to press on the Mike Singletary defense. It just needs to have an offense now that can sustain and keep leads going into the final quarters of the game. And again, with Zach Stacy, I don't know why they did not give him as many carries. Again, he did break that 49-yarder in the second half, but that was pretty much it from Zach Stacy. He had a handful of carries in that second half, and they gave it to Christian Hackenberg to try to win, and obviously he couldn't get it done. So again, a lot of questions for the Memphis Express. But for Arizona, they are 2-0, and they're looking pretty good. They're looking poised to be one of the better teams in the league, despite not having spectacular play from their quarterback. They do have a great running attack, and the yardage for the quarterback doesn't need to be there when the yardage for the running backs pick up the slack. And this was actually a week for running backs. There's a lot of great running performances in this game, in this game, yes, and then in the rest of the week as well. So tip of the cap to running backs this week for getting the job done. Definitely a great, spectacular performance. But I will say one thing, and this was a theme throughout the entire weekend as well, is drops killed a lot of quarterbacks this week. There was way too many drops in this weekend on plays that definitely should have been caught and at the very least contested more than they were. And I know it hurt a lot in one of the games we'll talk about later on. But yeah, I mean, drops overall were hurting quarterbacks left and right. So again, we're 2 games into this season, into this league. I expect to see a lot more offensive tightness and togetherness as the season continues. But for now, again, Arizona looking like a solid offense, and they're only going to get better. And Memphis needs a lot of work, and they'll get there. So that's it for this one. We'll go to halftime. With 192 yards on 7 receptions and 1 touchdown, Charles Johnson of the Orlando Apollos is this week's Player of the Week. And here's your Week 2 fantasy recap. Fantasy leaders for the week at quarterback, Garrett Gilbert of the Orlando Apollos, 19 of 28 for 393 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 2-point conversion. Good for 29.22 points on FanBall. At running back, Jawan Gardner of the San Diego Fleet, 15 carries for 104 yards, 2 touchdowns, adding 1 reception for 7 yards. Good for 26.1 points. At wide receiver, it was Charles Johnson's world. We were just living in it. The Orlando Apollos receiver grabbed 7 catches for 192 yards, a touchdown, good for 35.2 points. At flex, Trent Richardson of the Birmingham Iron, 19 carries, 41 yards, and a touchdown. He added 6 receptions for 50 yards, good for 21.1 points. Head down to fanball.com right now and put together your Week 3 fantasy roster for the AAF. Now let's get into what was probably, well, not probably, it really was the game of the week for the whole entire weekend. It was the Orlando Apollos, the San Antonio Commanders, in a game that was everything that it was supposed to be and everything that it was billed as. Orlando come back in a thrilling game, 37-29, to ultimately improve to 2-0 on the season, where San Antonio falls to 1-1. But again, this game lived up to the hype. There was plenty of scoring. There was plenty of drama. And for the longest time, it looked like San Antonio might just pull off the win. But Orlando had plenty of time to come back. Within 9 minutes of the final whistle, Orlando pulled ahead to win the game from behind. Players of the game in this one: Garrett Gilbert, 19 of 28 for 393 yards, 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. Logan Woodside actually had a good showing, 20 of 39 for 223 touchdown. He did have a pick, and he also had a 2-point conversion. But the story of the game was Gilbert to Johnson, Charles Johnson, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 192 yards, and a touchdown. So it's safe to say that Charles Johnson has the most receiving yards in a single game. He has that record for the AAF right now, and there's nobody even close to that one. The hero of game one, Jalen Marshall, didn't have a bad showing. He had 3 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown reception. So both of those receivers turning in good performances. And then in the rushing game, it was D'Ernest Johnson. If you do recall, we talked about D'Ernest Johnson last week in our fantasy matchup, but he actually came in with 57 yards on 8 carries. So he looked pretty good, where we thought that Akeem Hunt was going to be the go-to guy, but Hunt only -4 yards on 2 carries. He came in the first drive, and then we did not see anything from him after that. It's weird. I don't know. They gave up on him almost immediately, and ended up giving D'Ernest Johnson carries in the second half. There wasn't a whole lot of running game to even speak of for the Orlando Apollos. It was all Garrett Gilbert for the most part, and basically all Charles Johnson. And then for the San Antonio Commanders in the rushing game, Kenneth Farrow getting the job done on 13 carries. He had 74 yards and a touchdown. And then Marquise Williams actually came in, 3 rushes for 32 yards. Aaron Green got some rushes as well, 6 for 19. And David Cobb looking strong on his runs, 7 for 17. He actually looked better than the stats showed, but David Cobb looking like he is going to be a solid contributor to the San Antonio Commanders, offense. But, again, the scoring happened quick, and it happened almost instantaneously, where San Antonio came in, and it was Kenneth Farrow punching it in from 15 yards out to get the touchdown to score first for San Antonio. And then, not to be outdone, they came in again in the waning seconds of the first quarter, and had Logan Woodside passing to Rodriguez for a 1-yard touchdown. So getting the tight end involved for the touchdown on the second one. It was a nice little swing pass out. Woodside had everybody fooled. Rodriguez leaked out into the flat and caught the touchdown. So it was a good play design there. And just like that, it was 12-0 at the end of the first quarter. And everybody thought, here we go. Orlando is down, and they are probably not going to get back up. But that was not what Garrett Gilbert had in mind, as he marched his team down and let Smith march in for a 1-yard touchdown. Devon Smith get in for a 1-yard touchdown early in the second quarter, and then they got the 2-point conversion after that. San Antonio answered with a field goal in the fourth quarter, but then it was Orlando coming right back with a field goal to answer it. And then shortly before the end of the half, Garrett Gilbert tossed one of the most beautiful balls you'll ever see to Charles Johnson, who got it in for a 21-yard touchdown just before the end of the half. And then again, this is another one of those just haymaker throws from San Antonio, as they were able to actually get into field goal range at the end of the half and kick it in for the field goal. So again, it wasn't as if these two teams did not have enough ammunition for each other, and they grabbed the lead just before halftime, going in 18-17. So a 1-point lead for San Antonio going into the half. And then again, the punches did not stop there. It was San Antonio that got a 37-yard field goal early in the third quarter to extend their lead. And then it was the San Antonio defense's turn to make some noise. That same San Antonio defense that kept the San Diego Fleet at bay in week 1. They actually forced a fumble from Garrett Gilbert and rumbled it home for the touchdown. And that was a huge play at the time because Orlando looked like they were poised to do something and come back, but San Antonio stamped that shut and then got the 2-point conversion. And so then it was just all up to Orlando to come back after that. And they started to. The march was on. And a 24-yard field goal put up by Fry, followed by a 47-yard field goal put up by Fry. And then it was the strike to Jalen Marshall from Garrett Gilbert that really turned things around, because it basically gave them some momentum going into defense, which they turned into a pick 6. It was Woodside getting picked off by Reeser, and Reeser marched it in for a 38-yard touchdown, and then Orlando got the 2-point conversion, and that pretty much sealed the deal right there. That was the final coffin, or nail in the coffin, rather, for San Antonio, who, again, it was a hard-fought game. Both of these teams really came out to play, and it showed. And it just was a couple of defensive plays that made the difference, and it was a play of Garrett Gilbert and definitely the play of Charles Johnson to run away with this game. So for Orlando, again, they are now 2-0. San Antonio falls to 1-1, and Orlando looks like a hot team right now. They look like one of the more complete teams in the league early on, and it looks as if they are going to have some serious momentum going forward into the rest of the season, along with the Hotshots too. I mean, again, those are the two most complete-looking teams, I think. No offense to the Birmingham Iron, they still have. To me, it looks like they've got a little bit of work to do, especially if they want to have more of a threat in that offense. But for Orlando and for Arizona, they have got some good stuff to look forward to going forward. And with Garrett Gilbert, again, he looks like he's ready to go to the NFL again and play next season. He may not be back in Orlando after this season is over, so we'll see. That's it for this game recap. Let's go ahead and get on to the next. The nightcap had some excitement as it was the San Diego Fleet taking on the Atlanta Legends in a duel between winless teams. I know, 0-1, but it's still winless, right? Each team looking for their first win, and it was San Diego that came up with it in a rainy day. I tweeted out the song "It Never Rains in Southern California." Well, actually, last night it was raining in San Diego for the home opener of the Fleet, but they walked away with a 24-12 win in soggy conditions, and despite some very, very spotty quarterback play, they still managed to come away with the W to improve to 1-1, where Atlanta now falls to 0-2. Take a look at some of the notables. Philip Nelson, 14 of 30 for 142 yards with an interception, but a beautiful over-the-head no-look pass that Patrick Mahomes was actually jealous over. That pass, again, so for the second week in a row, a San Diego Fleet team quarterback makes the Sports Center highlight reels, but for two completely different reasons. As we remember last week, Mike Bercovici got nailed and his helmet sailed way up in the air, and that was a Sports Center moment. Now, this over-the-head no-look pass by Philip Nelson gets all the attention, and it was a completed pass nonetheless to Gavin Escobar, who I don't know how he caught it. I don't know how Philip managed to get it over his head and able to get it into the hands of Escobar, but it happened. And again, that wasn't anything spectacular as far as yardage or anything like that, but just the simple fact that it was a play that really came out of nowhere. And in fact, if you weren't paying attention, you didn't even know that it was a completed pass because you were so dumbfounded by the fact that Philip Nelson just literally chucked it over his head. Have you seen the movie Basketball? If you've seen the movie Basketball, where Coop it was Coop that threw the ball behind his head and made the basket to win the game, the Denslow Cup. That's kind of exactly how Philip Nelson was in that instance. He just threw it over his head and expected somebody to be there. I think he was trying to win the Denslow Cup with that play. But anyways, he was 14 of 30 for 142 yards with an over-the-head pass that was a beaut. Matt Sims, on the other hand, came in and he was 17 of 25, 160 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. But really, the steal of the game, I think, was the play of Juwan Gardner at running back. He had 15 carries, 104 yards, became the second 100-yard rusher in AAF history behind Zach Stacy, who was the first earlier that day. But he had a couple of nice runs, including a 31-yarder that was beautiful. He had 2 touchdowns on the night, so he could not be stopped, and he did a great job of carrying that team to a win. In the receiving area, San Diego Fleet style, they had Nelson Spruce. He caught 4 targets. He got 4 receptions on 6 targets for 58 yards. And that was really it as far as the notable receiving efforts. Brian Brown, who we talked a little bit about in our fantasy 4-pack for this last week, he had 3 catches on 6 targets for 27 yards and really didn't do a whole lot there. Dantes Ford had 1 catch for 17 yards. Cam Kelly, two catches for 17 yards. Gavin Escobar, 2 catches, including that one over the head catch from Nelson for 12 yards. So again, nothing to write home about offensively for this team. It was just a matter of being able to stay competitive and stay gritty in the elements and make plays when they needed to. It was Hagman's night. He had a 46-yard field goal, a 43-yard field goal, a 26-yard field goal, and a 33-yard field goal. So again, it was just a matter of a lot of field goals and a lot of being able to get in position for San Diego. Atlanta, on the other hand, they had their kicker, Young Hoku, 29-yard field goal, and then Sims managed to get his touchdown pass, but still not a lot to hang your hat on. For rushing wise, Atlanta, Lawrence Pittman, who we did talk about as well, he actually carried the ball 9 yards for 42 yards in what we thought was a pretty surprising performance. Taron Folston, 6 carries for 20 yards. On the receiving end for Atlanta, it was Akram Wadley, who got 8 of 8 targets for 70 yards, followed by Micah Jones, who caught all 3 of his targets for 37 yards and that touchdown from Sims. So really, again, this was not a pretty offensive game like the one that we got treated to between the Apollos and the Commanders, but there was a lot to be happy with if you were a San Diego Fleet fan and watching Juwan Gardner go off. Again, Philip Nelson, not a whole lot better than Mike Bercovici, but we're going to see where this quarterback battle falls out on, because again, 142 yards is not really the greatest of quarterback performances, and he did have an interception. So this game did not have a heck of a lot of firepower. Again, just like we were treated to the game before, and in where I said earlier about drops being the bane of all the quarterbacks' existence this week. It was prevalent this week. San Diego had a lot of drops, and you heard Maurice Jones-Drew in the broadcast pulling his hair out over the fact that the San Diego Fleet receivers were still wearing their gloves because it was just not helping at all to catch the ball. And in fact, they had so many drops that Philip Nelson's night could have been a little bit better had it been for the fact that a few more receivers hung on to some balls. Some very simple balls too. It wasn't like they were all hotly contested and thrown high in the air and having to make acrobatic catches. A lot of them were simple passes that were right between the 1 and the whatever number they had, but it just flat out dropped. So definitely frustrating for any quarterback, let alone somebody who's trying to fight for a starting job like Philip Nelson is. So again, it's the Fleet improving to 1-1 and Atlanta falling to 0-2. Atlanta's got some work to be done as well. They've got a lot of question marks going into their 3rd game of the season. And again, this is every game counts, and I'm going to say it until they stop counting, but every game counts in this league. There's only 10 of them. So they've got to come up with some answers. They've got to come up quick to keep pace with the likes of Orlando out there in the East. So, all right, that's the end of the game recaps. We've got a special segment coming up for you, and we're going to get right to it. Let's do a little overtime, shall we? I put out the question to you on Twitter to ask me some questions using the hashtag AskAllianceFBPod, and I definitely answer them on the show. So let's take those questions, shall we? It was Solo Hito, who is on Twitter at Twin622, asked me, will this league take quality players away from the CFL? I've already answered this question before, but I'll definitely do it right now, in that I don't think that it's going to take a whole lot of quality players away from the CFL, because listen, again, the funnel to even get to the CFL is so thin, just like the NFL. And the CFL only has 9 teams as of right now. I mean, they're working on a 10th, but that's still not a lot of roster spots, not a lot of active roster spots for players. So I think that there is still plenty of opportunity for other players to get an opportunity in the CFL. And we're starting, I mean, we still see that the players that are playing in the CFL right now, they're signing there again because they're making a little bit more. They like the security, they like the playing time. But then you see guys like Khalil Bass that used to play in the CFL, Lawrence Pittman, who used to play in the CFL. These guys were all on the fringe of rosters anyways, so they weren't a lot of starting caliber players, and so far there hasn't really been a whole lot of starting caliber players in the CFL that had defected to the AAF, nor have I seen any so far that have actually signed contracts with the AAF. So I don't know that it'll chip away at the overall quality of the CFL, and I don't necessarily see a drop in the quality of play or players that will play. And now you see the CFL that's looking outside of outside of America for talent. I mean, they're going to Germany, they're going to Mexico. They're looking around the world now to bring more talented players into the league and into football. So this is an opportunity the CFL is trying to seize on, and we may see some very talented players coming from those countries that we would not have seen otherwise. And maybe the fact that we're not picking up some of the fringe players that are signing with the AAF right now will give those guys a couple of roster opportunities. So, and I feel as if this is not just a breeding ground for the NFL. People forget that still, not a lot of these players are going to make it to the NFL. Everybody seems to think that this is a quick one-way ticket to the NFL. This league is an opportunity to show yourself for the NFL, but it's also an opportunity to show yourself and put more film to get into the CFL if you can't get into the NFL also. Again, the Canadian Football League is a professional football league just like the NFL, just like the AAF. Obviously, CFL does not have the TV budget or the budgets that the NFL has. But it's still a professional football league, and it still demands a lot out of their players. So the fact that the NFL still can't take everybody that plays in the AAF means that there's still players that are that type of caliber that can go play for the CFL if they want to make a little more money up there, and if they can. And again, if it's a player that necessarily didn't make it on the fringe of the AAF and still wants to go play in Canada, there's cuts that the AAF are making that can still play up in Canada. So we won't know for another couple of years what the quality of players that are going to the CFL, if it's diminishing or not. But as of right now, I just don't see it happening. Maybe if the AAF becomes more established, like it is poised to do, maybe it will, but I still don't think that the quality of play is going to lack. So thank you, Solohito, right? Or Twin662 or 622 on Twitter for that question. Scientifically Optimistic asked me, all 4 games this weekend were competitive, which was fun to see. His question is, with only 1 road victory through 8 games, is that an indication of short-term nerves, or is it going to stay true in the league over the long term? Again, once these teams start warming up, once offenses start clicking, I know that home team is always an advantage, especially in when you're setting over-unders or picking winners. But I think that once these offenses warm up, we're still going to see some competitive games, and I don't know that the home team is going to be as afraid, or I'm sorry, the road team is going to be as afraid to play away as they are right now. And again, I don't know that it's a coincidence that all the home teams, save one, have won so far. But I do know that home crowds play a lot into the psyche of these teams, and especially when you're just starting out. You play on a away crowd where the crowd is not with you, and it's hard to get up and hard to play when you're brand new and haven't really felt out where you stand in the overall scheme of things, offensively or defensively, and you're playing to a hostile crowd. So it's nice to be in a place where fans are cheering you. It gives you some energy and it gives you some get up to get it going. So I'll be interested, like you will, to see how this plays out. I don't think that it's a trend. I think we're just going to continue to have competitive games going through, and maybe home and road will be that 3-point difference that they usually give. But I don't know that the home team is going to enjoy much of an advantage going forward as it has right now. Once things get settled down, and we probably will be halfway through the season before we see anything like that play out. So I don't know that it'll be long term. I think it's just for now while everybody's getting accustomed to who they are and who the team is and playing in front of their home crowd. So thank you, Scientifically Optimistic, who is on Twitter at PC. Now you got to write this down. PCLVXV. PCLVXV, Scientifically Optimistic, thanks for your question. If you have any more questions for the show, you can use the hashtag AskAllianceFBPod, and I will definitely answer them on our Monday shows because they're a lot of fun to answer your questions. So again, thanks for the questions, you guys, and we will end the show right here. That'll wrap it up. Episode 11 of the Alliance Football Podcast is done. We have the game recaps that we just finished and the questions and all that other good stuff. And I just want to say again, thank you all for listening. This has been such a great ride so far. I cannot believe that we are already 11 episodes into this, and I can't believe we're only 2 weeks into the season. And we've been having some fun with the AAF. So make sure you go give me a follow on Twitter. Again, it's at AllianceFBPod. I love to interact with you guys. I love to have fun with you guys. And I love the fact that this is around the world. Those of you in, again, Australia, in Spain, in France, in Germany, all over the world, wherever you listen from, Brazil, Canada, I appreciate each and every one of you. I can't believe this Alliance family is growing so fast. And again, if you have not already, when you're following me on Twitter, go check out the contest. Win yourself a starter jacket. Make sure you follow the rules on the pinned tweet. And once we get to 1,000 followers, one of those starter jackets could be yours. So yeah, I'm excited to give it to you, and I'm excited that we're continuing to grow. So, all right, that's it. On Friday, we'll come back with the traditional just Friday episode, right? We'll have a couple of interviews for you, and we'll talk more about the games that are coming up this weekend. So until then, it's been a lot of fun giving you this episode, and together we are the Alliance. See you on Friday.